Hey, what's up, Good Life? Thanks for joining me for this 128 moment. You know, one idea from this weekend's sermon just keeps bouncing around in my head. It's probably because I needed to hear it. The idea that we shouldn't judge the rest of our story by the contents of our current chapter. You know, it's true we look at our lives, but it's also true we look to the lives of others as well. We think we're experts at predicting how people will turn out based on what we see in their current chapter. We are so quick to give up on people when they let us down. In fact, they don't have to give us a reason to give up. They just have to give us an opportunity. And we'll assume the rest of their story based on their worst moment. One example of this can be seen in the way that we view one of Jesus' disciples. When Jesus rose from the dead, he appeared to his disciples a number of times over a number of days. And everyone who saw Jesus believed he'd risen from the dead. But the first time Jesus appeared to his disciples, Thomas wasn't there. So when Thomas rejoined the group, he refused to believe that Jesus had risen from the dead unless he saw Jesus and he touched his wounds. But a few days later, while all the disciples were still scared and hiding behind locked doors, Jesus appeared before them. And Thomas's doubts crumbled in the presence of the risen Christ. And Thomas completely and totally believed. But is that how we remember Thomas? We don't call him believing Thomas. We don't call him brave Thomas. We call him doubting Thomas. For 2,000 years, the church has remembered Thomas by his worst possible moments. We have to assume, we've assumed we know the rest of his story based on the contents of one chapter. And he's forever known as doubting Thomas and defined by his worst moment. But what if I told you that's only part of the story? You see, before Jesus went to Jerusalem on that final time, he told his disciples what was going to happen when he got there. That his life and their lives were in grave danger because of the religious leaders. And in that moment of decision, when push came to shove and danger and death were likely, in John 11, Thomas responded to that situation. He says, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." When all the other disciples were silent, Thomas was ready to go and die. And then after Thomas's doubting moment, and after he finally believed, and after Jesus had ascended to heaven, Thomas obeyed the Great Commission, and he took the good news to the ends of the earth. Church tradition records that Thomas carried the gospel as far as India, and he was martyred there for his faith. If all we know of Thomas is his moment of doubt, we miss out on a story of how God uses imperfect people to accomplish his perfect plan. And if we assume we know the rest of our story based on the contents of our current chapter, we might miss out on becoming the person God created and saved us to be. You look to your past and you wonder how God could use you. You look to your current chapter and you wonder if God even cares. But we serve a God that's bigger than our failures, and a God who can use even our worst moments to accomplish his best plan. Now, this is an important truth for us to grasp for our lives. But what if it's true also for the lives of others as well? We have to remember that we serve a God who can save anyone at any time, even if we've decided the rest of the story based on the contents of their current chapter. So I want you to think about a person that you know who doesn't know Jesus, a person who you think is so far from God, they may be too far gone. Well, I'll tell you, God is not finished writing their story. So no matter what chapter you think they're in, I encourage you, keep sharing the good news with him and let God decide how their story turns out. We have been challenged to love enough to share the good news as we share life. And let's not decide how people's story turns out based on the chapter that we are seeing. Go and love enough Good Life. I love you guys. I miss you guys. I look forward to seeing you guys. And I'll see you tomorrow at 128.